and then it led to the facial swelling. I had lips swell up after eating, sometimes around my eye, my fingers, my toes were all getting swollen, and at that time that was pretty scary because, you know, for some people that leads to the breathing passage closing up, and I didn't know if that was going to happen to me. My name is Josh, I'm 30 years old and I'm from Saskatoon, Canada.
Okay, and your health used to be quite different from today. What was your health issues when you were a kid?
Yeah, it all started for me like shortly after birth. Once you know, I started having dairy, that led to some big issues for me. Everything from I was having diaper rash as an infant and really bad oral thrush, and the worst thing was ear infections that I was having, really painful ear infections. So my mom had to take me to the doctor and get antibiotics for those ear infections, and I believe those caused some issues for me. The doctor recommended that my mom keep me on dairy even though I was showing some signs of intolerance. So I kept eating dairy basically my whole life, not really realizing what it was doing to me. You know, and I was okay for the most part growing up. Like I was still, you know, had a regular childhood and playing lots of sports and being active, and that was fine. But you know, things were building up, and I experienced pretty bad acne as a teenager and even into my 20s. And yeah, so it really just all started with that in childhood for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what happened next?
So with the acne I had in my teenage years and even into my 20s in university, it wasn't super severe, but it was pretty bothersome to me. I had oily skin, dry skin, and acne, and was pretty insecure about it to the point where I ended up getting some antibiotics, some broad spectrum antibiotics for it, and that helped at the time, but I believe that caused some further digestive problems for me. Like it was so bad that you know, even my university graduation photos at age 22 had to be photoshopped to clear up the acne for my pictures. Yeah. And so I believe that around that time, when I had the antibiotics, I was also under a lot of stress in university and probably not the best dietary and lifestyle choices. And a little while after that too, I took had some vaccinations before traveling. And I feel like a combination of those things really led to more health issues for me.
Like, for example?
Well, there was two really big things that kind of woke me up to realizing that I was, you know, really struggling and that things were piling up. And the first thing was that my hair started falling out. I didn't go completely bald or anything. I have something called chronic telogen effluvium, where a smaller percentage of your hair falls out, and it falls out right from the roots. So as well, it was really like dry but also oily and just feeling like it was dead. So yeah, I was diagnosed with that, and that gave me a scare, you know, trying to figure that out, only being like 22 years old. And it wasn't male pattern baldness, it was something different. And then the next thing, the biggest thing for me actually was a little later on I developed anaphylactic allergies, to the point where my face started swelling up. It started with just being itchy, and then it led to hives where, like, along my veins, on my arms and legs, I started getting itchy hives, and then it led to the facial swelling. I had lips swell up after eating, sometimes around my eye, my fingers, my toes were all getting swollen, and at that time that was pretty scary because, you know, for some people that leads to the breathing passage closing up, and I didn't know if that was going to happen to me. And just before that I was about to travel to Asia, so like my mom was really worried about me too. And yeah, so that really gave me a scare and made me step back and start analyzing, what am I eating, what's doing this, you know, what went wrong.
So what did you change or do?
So with those allergies, it even took me a little while to figure out that it was food. At first I thought like, oh, maybe it's the soap I'm using or whatever, but once I realized that it was food, I started doing like elimination diets and trying to track down which foods were causing these, and I did some allergy tests and just a lot of self-experimentation. And that was a starting point for me for self-experimentation, especially with diet, and now that's become a regular thing for me where I'm always kind of experimenting to figure out how I respond to different foods.
Okay. So what did you do? Like, what did you change?
Well, at first I was changing things kind of from a point of desperation, where I would kind of try whatever someone recommended, you know, different diets like paleo or eating for your blood type or whatever, and nothing really seemed to work that well. It was just like, yeah, as I said, like desperation. But ultimately, that led me to not just questioning what works for me, but what makes sense for humans to be eating, like what aligns with our human physiology and anatomy, and what makes sense in nature. And kind of all that research and exploration and self-experimentation led me to like a whole food, plant-based, high carb, low fat type of diet, with fruit being the basis of the diet. So eventually I started eating that way, and yeah, that's when I really started seeing improvements in my health. Nice.
So what would you like eat, for example?
Well, I remember, like, besides the hair loss problem and the anaphylactic allergies, I was having many different issues, especially digestive issues. Like after eating, I almost always either had the allergy, or I just had like a blood sugar spike, or I had some gut pain to the point where I had to just like lay in bed in fetal position for like half an hour for that to go away, or I would just need to sleep because of how bad the blood sugar spikes were. Even having like really bad tension in my jaw at a point, so I just felt like everything I was eating was harming me, and I kind of like didn't even want to eat anymore, because it's like, why would I keep harming myself? That got me interested in fasting, and I did some fasting, and I felt better not eating than I did eating. And eventually, this was just a little over about 2.5 years ago, I remember I was helping some family with some home renovations, and I would bring my lunch, and I was making some white rice with potatoes and squash, and I would eat that for lunch. So, you know, a high carb or whole food, plant-based type of meal. And I remember like not feeling anything after eating, which is how it should be, but that was such a breakthrough for me, because for like so many years it was like I just felt terrible after eating. So I was just like, wow, I can eat something, and I can keep working in the afternoon without feeling like bloated or stomach pain or fatigue or an allergy or something. So yeah, that kind of confirmed what I had researched in this, you know, more whole food, plant-based, high carb, low fat type of thinking. So it was for me, theory being backed by practice, and that's reinforced that type of eating for me.
Right. And I know you had a long list of other things you overcame.
Yeah.
Like, can you tell me that?
Sure. Yeah. For me, it was never anything super serious. Like I never had cancer or anything like that. But it was like 70 symptoms from head to toe, starting, you know, with my hair issue, the skin, the oily skin, acne-prone skin, dry skin. I had pretty bad swollen lymph nodes here in the back of my neck, congested a lot of times and getting colds. My skin color was just not like healthy. You know, quite a few people have mentioned to me in the last year or two that my complexion is much better. Even in my mouth, I had the bad like candida, oral thrush, white tongue, bad dental plaque. Internally, like bad brain fog, and feeling lethargic, losing interest in things I used to have an interest in, feeling like I was slurring words and being less comfortable in social settings, to you know, the rest of my body with like joint pain and itchiness and psoriasis and athlete's foot, and yeah, with the digestive issues like bloating and discomfort, and terribly like irregular bowel movements. So really just head to toe, like 75 things.
Wow.
Yeah. Right.
So like, what diet did you continue to eat then, and why?
Yeah. So in the last 2 or 3 years, I've stuck to that like whole food, plant-based, high carb, low fat, with really the focus being fruit. Like no matter where I am, I travel a lot. No matter where I am, fruit is always like the basis of my diet. Starting the day with that, especially like hydrating fruits or coconut water as well. So keeping the body hydrated, and then trying to eat, yeah, just whole foods, less processed stuff, things that really make sense to me, like with the human anatomy and what we would find in nature. And to me, it's like fruit, no matter which way I look at it, from the environmental to the ethical to the symbiotic relationships, like fruit just makes the most sense for me, and so that's always the basis of my diet for the last 2 or 3 years now.
How do you feel today?
I feel so much better than I did. It's really hard to recognize with me though, and I don't appreciate it enough, because this all started for me like 2010, 2012, and got really bad like 2014. But I wish I could wake up tomorrow feeling like I felt in 2014, so that I could see like how bad I really felt at that time, because it's been such a long progression for me, where I didn't feel it so quickly. But when I look back even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and like remember the symptoms I had and how I felt, it's a huge change. And now it's where it used to be 60 or 70 symptoms. Now I just have 6 or 7 left that I'm working at, and yeah, I don't feel that my those symptoms I have left are really interfering with much of anything. I can go spend the whole day out, like when I'm traveling, and I feel good.
And how is your energy and mood compared to before?
It's way more consistent and steady. I've always been that type of person, but with the food responses, it was really bringing me down at times. And now it's pretty rare for me to have any kind of food response. And I've gotten more into intermittent fasting as well, and I find that helps regulate everything for me. So yeah, I feel better now at age 30 than I did at age 22, 23, 24 for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what about like physical strength?
Yeah, as far as physical strength, I know that's been maybe a concern with people. It's like, oh, you're not eating animal products anymore, you're not getting enough protein. But I don't believe that in the research I've done, and in theory it doesn't make sense to me, and in practice it doesn't make sense to me either. I've been able to go to the gym and work out and be able to add muscle and add strength, and I can notice it even week to week. So as long as I'm eating enough and training consistently, my strength is great. And one thing I noticed actually around the time that I made the change from going from more of the standard American Canadian diet to eating when I committed to being a vegan, is that I just had so much more stamina. Like playing basketball, I could just run and run and run, even at age 28, whereas playing through my late teenage years and early 20s, I would get tired so easily. So even though I wasn't in as good of shape in my late 20s, I felt way more energy playing. That was a big thing that I noticed.
Nice. Any final words?
I think, it's so important just to become more mindful. Like if people are struggling with things like me, just really pay attention to what you're eating, simplify, maybe do journals, and just track how your body responds, and listen to your body. All this experimentation I've done has just made me become way more in tune with what's going on, and I think that's super important.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Er du blevet nysgerrig for, hvad det er for en kost, man skal spise for at opnå de her resultater? Så gå over på min hjemmeside Rask på Raw. Her kan du nemlig downloade min gratis Kom I Gang guide, som fortæller dig meget mere om principperne, så du selv kan komme i gang. Og hvis du er klar til at tage dit liv og helbred til endnu højere højder, så lad mig coach dig helt personligt, så du får de allerbedste resultater. Vi ses på min hjemmeside. Hej hej!